2 weeks ago was my 44th birthday, and I wasn't feeling too hot that morning. I went down to breakfast knowing my wife would be pleasant and say, "Happy birthday." Probably have a present for me. She didn't even say good morning, let alone any happy birthday. And I thought, well, that's wives for you. The children will probably remember. The children came down to breakfast and they didn't say a word either. So I started off to the office. I was feeling really low and despondent. As I walked into my office, my secretary Janet said, "Good morning, boss. Happy birthday." And I felt a little better. Someone had remembered. I worked until noon. Then Janet knocked on my door and said, "It's such a beautiful day outside and it's your birthday. Let's go to lunch, just you and me." And I said, "By George, that's the greatest thing I've heard all day. Let's go." So we went to lunch, and we didn't go where we normally go. We went out to lunch at a little country private place. We had 2 martinis and enjoyed lunch tremendously. On the way back to the office, she said, "It's such a beautiful day. We don't need to go back to the office, do we?" And I said, "No, I guess not." And she said, "Let's go to my apartment." So after arriving at her apartment, she said, "Boss, if you don't mind, I think I'll go into the bedroom and slip into something more comfortable." I'm like, "Sure," I excitedly replied. She went to the bedroom. In about 6 minutes, she came out carrying a birthday cake, followed by my wife, children, and dozens of our friends. And they were all singing happy birthday, and there I sat on the couch, butt-ass naked.
In your birthday suit.
The science teacher stood in front of the class, and he said, "Children, if you could have one raw material in the world, what would it be?" Little Stevie, he raised his hand. He says, "I want gold because gold is worth a lot of money, and I could buy a Corvette." The teacher nodded. She called on little Susie. "Hey, little Susie, what do you want?" And she goes, "I want platinum because platinum is worth more than gold, and I could buy a Porsche." And the teacher smiled, and then she came and called on little Johnny. And little Johnny stood up and said, "I want silicone." The teacher's like, "Silicone? Why silicone, Johnny?" "Well, because my mom has 2 bags of the stuff, and you should see all the sports cars outside of our house." True story. I was happy, and my girlfriend and I had been dating for over a year, so we decided to get married. My parents helped us in every way. My friends encouraged me, and my girlfriend, well, she was a dream. There was only one thing bothering me. Very much indeed, and that one thing was her younger sister. My prospective sister-in-law was 20 years of age, wore tight miniskirts and low-cut blouses. She'd regularly bend down when near me, and I got many pleasant views of her underwear. Had to be deliberate, because she never did it to anyone else except me. One day, a little sister called me and asked me to come over to check the wedding invitations. She was alone when I arrived, and she whispered to me that soon I was going to be married, and she had feelings and desires for me that she just could not overcome and didn't really want to overcome. She told me that she wanted to make love to me just once before I got married and committed my life to her sister. I was in total shock and I couldn't say a word. So she said, "I'm going to go upstairs to my bedroom, and if you want to go ahead with it, just come on up and get me." I was stunned. I was frozen in shock as I watched her go up the stairs. She even pulled her panties off and threw them down the stairs at me. I stood there for a moment and turned and went straight to the front door. I opened the door and stepped out the house. I walked straight towards my car. My future father-in-law was standing outside with tears in his eyes. He hugged me and said, "We're very happy that you have passed our little test. We couldn't have asked for a better man for our daughter. Welcome to the family." The moral of the story is, never keep your condoms in your car.
Or do keep them in your car.
Yeah.
A mother and her son were flying Southwest Airlines from Kansas City to Chicago. The son, who had been looking out the window, turned to his mother and asked, "If big dogs have baby dogs and big cats have baby cats, why don't big planes have baby planes?" The mother, who couldn't think of an answer, told her son to ask the stewardess. So the boy asked the stewardess, "If big dogs have baby dogs and big cats have baby cats, why don't big planes have baby planes?" And the stewardess responded, "Did your mother tell you to ask me this?" The boy said, "Yes, she did." She's like, "Well, then tell your mother that there are no baby planes because Southwest always pulls out on time."
Oh,
Cute.
have fun
Cute.
explaining that to your kid.
Paul's out on time, buddy.
The FBI is considering 3 men to be hired. They bring them in and speak to the interviewer separately. The first man comes in and sits down, and the interviewer asks him, "Do you love your wife?" The man replies, "Yes, I do, sir." So, "Do you love your country?" And he's like, "Yes, I do." So the interviewer continues, "What do you love more, your wife or your country?" And he replies, "My country, sir." The interviewer looks at the man and says, "Okay, we brought in your wife. Take this gun and go in the next room and kill her." The man goes into the room, and all is silent for 5 minutes. He comes back with his tie loosened. He's all sweating. He puts the gun down and leaves. The second guy comes in and sits down, and the interviewer asks him the same question, and the responses are the same. The interviewer gives him a gun and tells him to go kill his wife. The guy puts the gun down and says, "I can't do that, man," and he leaves. Well, the third guy comes in. Same thing happens. The interviewer gives him a gun, tells him to go kill his wife. The guy goes in the room, and you hear blam, 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 blam. This is followed by a bunch of crashing sounds that end after a few minutes. The guy comes out the room with his tie loosened and puts the gun on the table. And the interviewer looks at him and says, what the hell happened in there, man?" The guy says, "Well, the gun you gave me was filled with blanks, so I had to strangle her ass." A little boy and his grandfather are raking leaves in the yard. The little boy sees an earthworm trying to get back into its hole, and he says, "Grandpa, I bet I can put that worm back in that hole." Grandfather replies, "I bet you $5 you can. It's too wiggly and limp to put back in that little hole." The little boy runs in the house and comes back out with a can of hairspray. He sprays the worm until it's straight and stiff as a board. The boy then proceeds to put the worm back into the hole. The grandfather hands the little boy $5. He grabs the hairspray can and runs in the house. 30 minutes later, the grandfather comes back out, hands the boy another $5, and the little boy says, "Grandpa, you already gave me $5. The grandpa replies, "No, grandson, that's from your grandmother." After having their 11th child, an Alabama couple decided that was enough, as they could not afford a larger bed. So the husband went to his doctor/veterinarian and told him that he and his wife/cousin didn't want to have any more children. The doctor told him there was a procedure called a vasectomy that could fix the problem, but it was really expensive. But there was a less costly alternative, said the doctor. He said, "Go home, get a cherry bomb, light it, put it in a beer can, and then hold the cap up to his ear and count to 10. The Alabamian said to the doctor, "I may not be the smartest man in the world, but I don't see how putting a cherry bomb in a beer can next to my ear is going to help me." The doctor said, "Trust me, it will." So the man went home. He lit the cherry bomb and put it in the beer can. He held the can up to his ear, and he began to count on his hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At which point he paused, placed the beer can between his legs, and resumed counting on his other hand.
Bam.
Old Dickless.
I got 2 more for you. The judge says to a double homicide defendant, "You're charged with beating your wife to death with a hammer." A voice in the back of the courtroom yells out, "You bastard!" The judge says, "You're also charged with beating your mother-in-law to death with a hammer." And the voice in the back of the courtroom yells out, "You goddamn bastard!" And the judge stops and says to the guy in the back of the courtroom, "Sir, I can understand your anger and frustration at this crime, but no more outbursts from you or I'll charge you with contempt. Is that a problem?" So the guy in the back of the court stands up and says, "For 15 years I've lived next door to this motherfucker, and every time I've asked to borrow a hammer, he said he didn't have one." I hear a little bit of echoing coming from somebody's mic.
Yeah, it's coming from Steven. Steven, your mic's on. It's pretty loud.
Okay, there we go.
Or
Stop.
Jeff can go. There we go.
Okay, and here's my last joke. A young man and his date were parked on a back road some distance from town. They were about to have sex when the girl stopped and said, "I really should have mentioned this earlier, but I'm actually a hooker and I charge $20 for sex." The man reluctantly paid her with a sigh, and they did their thing. After her cigarette, the man just sat in the driver's seat looking out the window. "Why aren't we going anywhere?" asked the girl. The man says, "Well, I should have mentioned this before, but I'm actually a serial killer, and I'm going to kill you.
Oh.
And with that,
Hilarious.
thanks.
Oh, let's give it up for Randy, everyone. Randy.
Yay! 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 Not Randy. Braden.
Oh, sorry, Braden. Randy just came in.